everyone, and welcome to 2000s Show, a show where we look at everything that made the 2000s great. Now, in today's episode, we're going to be looking at The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. Now, this is one of my favorite games, since it was actually the first game I played back in the Christmas of 2000. Anyway, without further ado, let's get started. Now, as the game begins, Link is traveling in the Lost Woods looking for Navi, the fairy that left him at the end of Ocarina of Time. However, Skull Kid comes along and robs Link of his ocarina and his horse. Distressed, Link chases Skull Kid into a clearing, and this is where the actual game begins. Link then follows Skull Kid into a cave, and because Skull Kid likes playing tricks on people, he decides to transform Link into a Dooku Scrub, much to Link's dismay. You then meet a fairy named Tato who decides to join up with you in order to get revenge on Skull Kid for leaving him or her. I'm not really sure of the fairy's gender. Link then enters the clock tower in this sort of surreal fashion. He then meets a male Happy Mask salesman who promises if Link can recover his ocarina, he will transform him back into a human. Now, as soon as you enter Clock Town, you are going to see a lot of familiar faces from Ocarina of Time, like the peddler who is now a banker. A character will notice you, and that is Tingle, the 38-year-old man that still thinks he is a kid, and that he wishes a fairy would come to him. Yeah. Now, you'll encounter this group of children who call themselves the Bombers, and they won't let you into their secret hideout unless you play hide-and-seek with them. As you begin finding them, the kids try to run away from you in a sort of weird, funny fashion. Ha, look at him run. After you find all the kids, they won't let you join because you are a Dooku Scrub. Those racist bastards. But they do give you the code that gets you into their hideout, which turns out to be an old man with a telescope. Why does this old man like kids to hang around with him and with his big telescope? You don't think. Nah, this is an E-rated game. Anyway, if you look at the clock tower with the telescope, you'll see the Skull Kid shaking his ass at you, as if to mock you. Anyway, a tear will come out of the moon. Now, back into Clock Town. You realize that you can't get into the clock tower because you are too short, but luckily there is a Dooku plant thing next to the tower. However, another Dooku Scroll won't let you use it unless you give him the Moon's Tear. At midnight of the final day, the clock tower doors begin to open and you can finally confront Majora. Well, Skull Kid. Now you shoot Skull Kid with your booger bubble thing, causing him to drop your ocarina. As soon as Link picks it up, it brings back the memory of the Song of Time. While your day streaming, Tattle panics, saying we need more time, and thus Link plays his ocarina, which with a Dooku Scrub transformed into pipes. This resets time. Link then goes back to the Happy Mask salesman, who is delighted to see him. The masked salesman certainly is odd. He teaches Link a song that will heal his sores and transform him back into a human. He also asks Link for Majora's Mask as well. When Link doesn't have the mask, the salesman strangles Link in rage and tells him the story of how Majora's Mask came to be. From what I gather, it came from an ancient society that used it in their hexing rituals. You eventually come across this carving in a tree that the Skull Kid made when he first encountered the fairies. The game flashes back to this moment, and it kind of brings about a bit of sympathy towards the Skull Kid before he got Majora's Mask, as it shows how lonely he was before he met the fairies. When a game does this, it really is good storytelling, since it sort of develops a character, which in my opinion is something that a great work of art must strive for. This game really is a load of sad moments like that. For example, you eventually learn that Tingle has a father, who of course is the swamp tour guide, and when you show him a picture of Tingle, he kind of stutters for a moment and says, "That's my son." Another moment in this game that is kind of sad but kind of funny is at the same time is when the Dooku King is punishing a monkey, since this monkey supposedly kidnapped the Dooku princess. However, in reality, the monkey was attempting to warn the Dooku King that the princess was in grave danger because she was trapped in the Woodfall Temple. This game really is dark, since throughout the entire game this giant moon with a menacing face is staring down at you throughout the entire game. Now, something quite interesting did happen to me while playing this game. While playing through Woodfall Temple, the game froze. Now, in most Zelda games, if this happened, you would simply restart at the beginning of the temple. However, here in Majora's Mask, you start at the beginning of the 3D day cycle if the game should somehow freeze. Now that is what I call just awful. That is inexcusable. Why do you have to save owl stage statues throughout the game, and then if the game should somehow freeze, then you have to restart that 3-day cycle? However, in Ocarina of Time, you could pause the game whenever you wanted, save, and then continue on where you left off if the game should somehow freeze. This is a blemish in an otherwise perfect game. Now, when you defeat the boss at the end of Woodfall Temple, you find the princess and you carry her back in the palace in a bottle. Yeah, a bottle. How can she fit in? There. When you take her back to the Dooku King, he is relieved and he tells the butler to present you with the Mask of Sense, but you first must follow the butler through a maze called the Dooku Shrine. This is reminiscent of following Dampy, the Gravekeeper, in Ocarina of Time to get the hookshot. However, in Majora's Mask, the butler will travel faster than Dampy. In fact, most of the time in the Dooku Shrine, you just have to take a guess on which way to go. It's not too hard to figure out which way to go, since most of the time you're presented 2 or 3 choices on which path to take, and the wrong path goes to a dead end pretty quickly. So it's not hard to recover from the wrong choice. Now on to Snowhead. Snowhead Majora's Mask is the homeland of the Gorons, and unlike in Ocarina of Time, Snowhead, as the name implies, is an icy wasteland, unlike Death Mountain in Ocarina of Time, which was just a volcano. You learn from an owl that Snowhead wasn't always covered in snow, and that it will become an icy wasteland where no living thing can live. Because of a curse from the Skull Kid, this owl leads you to the Lens of Truth, and with it you can see Darmani, a dead Goron warrior. Darmani leads you to his grave and asks you to heal his sorrows, so naturally you play the Song of Healing, and it transforms Darmani into a mask that Link can wear. This mask will transform Link into a Goron and will cause Link to be mistaken for Darmani by other Gorons. As Snowhead, you will also meet a crying child who misses his daddy, and because of this, Link is kind. He searches for the child's daddy. Link eventually finds him frozen, covered in snow. Link unfreezes him and he teaches Link the opening to the Goron melody. Why only the opening? Apparently he can only remember the opening. You play this song for the sobbing Goron, and he teaches the rest to Link, and at the same time he falls asleep. When you finally reach the Snowhead Temple, you discover that it's actually a giant Goron that is causing the blizzard, making it impossible to actually enter the Snowhead Temple. When you play the Goron melody, the big Goron falls asleep and falls into the valley below. He probably died, and you finally enter the temple. For the most part, there's nothing particularly frustrating in the Snowhead Temple, except when you have to use the Goron's roll ability to travel across scat. It can sometimes be very hard to steer yourself when you are rolling, and sometimes you just fall off the path, and then you have to climb all the way back up the ladder and try again. As for the final boss, Goat. He's basically a mechanical bull that runs in a circle. The only way to attack him is to use the Goron roll and just crash into him. His methods of attack are he shocks you with a lightning ball, he drops bombs on you, and he will cause rocks to fall from the ceiling. Overall, it's not a very frustrating boss, but it is a challenge. After you defeat the boss, spring will happen in Snowhead, which means you can finally get the Goron Powder Cake, which gives you the ability to blow up large portions of rock, which means you can finally compete in the Goron races. The Goron races are very frustrating. One of the things that makes it so frustrating is the fact that if you bump into other competitors, it can sometimes slow you down, and when you try to recover from this, another competitor will most likely knock you over. Once you do finally win the race, you are rewarded with a gold dust. If you bring the gold dust to the blacksmith, you can use it to upgrade your sword to the Razor Sword, the second most powerful sword in the game. Time to reset time. Now you have the powder kegs, which you can now finally enter Romani Ranch, where you reunite it with Epona. At a Romani's Ranch, you can learn that every year, before the carnival, aliens come to Romani Ranch to abduct cows. Seriously, Nintendo? That's so cliche. Anyway, in order to get your horse back, you simply have to use your bow to pop balloons that look like aliens while riding your horse. If you pop all the balloons fast enough, you win Epona back and finally enter the Great Bay Coast. First, you should probably get the girl's mask from the Gorman brothers, which will come in late handy later. At Great Bay Coast is anything but a paradise. When you first meet Mako, a Zora who is about to die because he was beaten to a pulp by the Gerudo pirates, he claims he won't be in peace until his sorrows are healed. So naturally you must play the Song of Healing, which in turn gives you the Zoro Mass. Mako's final wish is for you to help a singer in his band who has lost her eggs and her voice. The Pirate Fortress is very reminiscent of the Gerudo Thieves' hideout from Ocarina of Time, whereby you have to be very sneaky in order to find all of the eggs. If you are caught, they will simply throw you out of the fortress, but not outside its outer walls, which helps you since you can easily get back in from where they throw you. After you find all the eggs, you will finally learn the song necessary to enter the Great Bay Temple. Now, Great Bay Temple is this game's water temple, and is my least favorite of the temples in this game. First off, in order to solve a puzzle, you have to activate a valve on the other side of the temple, and in fact, you can't even get to certain areas without activating a valve. And another thing that is annoying about this temple is a room with a giant water wheel that causes a current in the water below. In order to get into another area of this temple, you have to enter passageways that are in the water. But if you enter a passageway that you did not intend on entering, you are stuck in there because the current will not allow you to exit through the same way you came in. Instead, you must continue on that path until you are back in the water wheel room. As for the boss of the Great Bay Temple, it is a giant fish that attacks you. This boss is probably the second hardest boss in the game, and it is due to one simple problem. Georg attacks you. He will do it when you can't see him, and he will just attack you from the side of the camera. I died so many times that I just wanted to hurl my controller at the TV screen. When I finally beat him, I just felt awesome and proud. After you defeat Georg, you can get a ball from beavers in a race. This race is not too difficult as long as you follow the beavers exactly. You should win. And now it's time to reset time once again. The next area is called Icona Valley, the Land of the Dead. This area is my favorite area. I don't know why, but something about Icona Valley just seems interesting to me. The first thing to do is to get the captain's hat. In order to get this mask, you have to race against this giant skeleton, while at the same time defeating an army of smaller skeletons. I recommend using the Goron mask, since you can take out 2 enemies at once. Once you finally catch the skeleton, he'll give you the captain's hat. With the hat, skeletons won't attack you, and you can even order them around. Later, you meet a ghost named Sharp, who tries to kill you with music. And of course, your natural reaction is to play the Song of Healing. However, you actually have to play the Song of Storms. The storm that ensues will now allow you access to the music house. First, you need to get in there, the little girl to leave. So naturally, you just place a bomb in front of the door. Now that seems kind of excessive, but oh well, it worked. What happens next is sort of emotional for me. When you get inside, you discover the girl's father has been turned into a Gibdo, possibly by the Skull Kid. But when you release him from the curse, it's quite emotional to see the little girl hug her father like that. Unlike the previous areas, where in order to learn the song to get in the temple, you just have to do a bunch of tasks. You have to go through a mini dungeon in order to get to the King of Icenia. The King of Icenia's boss fight involves a fight between his 2 servants and then the King. The only thing that is frustrating about this fight is when the King pops off his head and flies around you, and when he does this, you can't attack him. After the fight, you are treated to this hilarious cutscene between the King's servants, where one of them calls them the other feeble. From the King, you learn a song that allows Link to leave shells of himself around, and the first time you play it, Link turns into Ben. Well, leaves a Ben statue. Anyway. You later discover that it's pointless to leave around the shell of Dooku Link, since he is not heavy enough to press any switches, so you really can only leave behind 3 shells. It's time to talk about the Stone Tower Temple. By far, this is my favorite temple in this game. This is probably because the temple music sounds really nice, and you play through the temple twice. Once right side up and once upside down. I find this to be an interesting mechanic since it gives rise to some very unique puzzles that can only be solved by switching the orientation of the temple. If I could find one bad thing about this temple, it would have been the room where you have to shine light into mirrors in order for you to disintegrate a block. But they're little balls that crawl around the room, and no matter how many times you kill them, they always respawn. However, the stone mask makes this room a lot easier, because the mask essentially makes you invisible to enemies. When it comes to the temple's boss, it would be impossible without the Giant's mask, but the mask drains the magic power. So my suggestion for this fight is simply to slash your sword at Twin Bolt until he dies. Now, this game is relatively short for a Zelda game since it only has 4 dungeons, but it actually makes up for that because it has lots of side quests. And in particular, there's one I wish to talk about, and that's the side quest to get the couple's mask. Now, this side quest actually involves you getting 3 other masks, so let's take a look at that. You start with Kifi's mask. You get this mask by talking to the mayor's wife, where you find out her son has gone missing. If you tell her you will look for her son, she will give you Kifi's mask. Next, you go to the Stockpot Inn, and you will talk to the innkeeper while wearing Kifi's mask, and she will ask you to meet her in the kitchen. She will then give you a letter. Deliver this letter, and you will be able to meet Kifi. You will discover that Kifi is an adult and that has been transformed into a child by Skull Kid and has been hiding there ever since. Apparently, and is hiding behind the curiosity shop ever since. Apparently, Kifi and Anju, the innkeeper, were supposed to get married, but a thief stole their wedding mask. Kifi asks you to deliver a pendant to Anju. When Anju sees the pendant, she promises to wait for him. When you return to Kifi, you discover that Kifi has gone to Ikenya Canyon in order to track down the thief that stole his mask. At the same time, you get the Keaton mask from the Curiosity Shop store owner. When you finally get to the thief's hideout, you end up in a race against time in order to retrieve the wedding mask, because the thief has placed it on a conveyor belt, and you must solve puzzles in order to get it. After this is done, Kifi rushes back to Clockdown while you end up delivering a letter to the postman. Now, the postman walks very slowly, especially since the moon is going to fall on him. Once the postman delivers the letter to Kifi's mother, you reward it with the postman's hat. Now, you just have to wait for Kifi to return to Anju in order to get the couple's mask. This is definitely a very long side quest, one that reveals just how powerful true love can be. Even when you realize that Anju is willing to wait for Kifi, even though she knows that the moon will fall and she will most likely die, but despite all that, she cannot go on living without Kifi. Now it's time to talk about the ending of this game. Once you have freed all the giants, it's time for a showdown with the Skull Kid. Unlike the first encounter with him, this time you will actually be able to stop him by summoning the giants you freed. The giants then try to stop Skull Kid by holding up the weight of the moon. Of course, Majora's Mask is infuriated by this, and then proceeds to force the moon to fall. Link then travels into the moon in order to stop Majora. When you travel inside the moon, you are transported into this sort of surreal environment. If you manage to collect all the masks, you will then be able to play with the children on the moon in their dungeons. However, there is something philosophical that each of the children say at the end of their dungeons. They say, "Your friends, what kind of people are they? I wonder, do these people think of you as a friend? You, what makes you happy? Does it make others happy too? The right thing, what is it? I wonder. If you do the right thing, does it really make everybody happy? And your true face, what kind of face is it? I wonder, the face under the mask, is that your true face?" All these quotes seem to make reference to the Skull Kid. It shows how the Skull Kid wondered if he had any friends. His pranks were indeed funny, if the right thing will make others happy, and if his face had really was his true face. I guess for Nintendo, they really wanted the player to feel sympathy for the Skull Kid and why he turned out the way he did. Anyway, after the dungeons, you fight Majora, who has 3 forms. The first is simply the mask. The second one is kind of a creature that just prances around. And the final form is this muscular creature with whips. The fight is not that hard as long as you keep your eye on it, especially when you compare it to the previous fight with Go. Anyway, after the boss fight, the giants tell the Skull Kid that they always thought of him as a friend, and the happy mask salesman seems sad that the evil has left the mask after all. Next, the carnival starts and Link rides off into the distance. Overall, The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask is a very well written and designed game. I just wish they copied what they did when it came to the save system from Ocarina of Time. Anyway, other than that, I have no major grievances with it. Anyway, please like, favorite, subscribe, and also check out my secondary YouTube channel, The Power Media, where you can see all of the game footage that I used in this review.